1 Samuel 1, we're going to read verses 1 through 28. We're going to read the whole chapter. 1 Samuel chapter 1. There was a certain man of Ramathaim, Zophim, of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jehoram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. That is a bad start. That is where we start downhill, right there in verse 2. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were the priests of the Lord. On the day where Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. I know women would never irritate one another or provoke one another, but this might be the only story where that happened. Verse 7. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? Isn't that some great male counseling right there? After they had eaten and drank in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed, and she prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look upon the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but I will give to your servant a son. Then when I will give him to the Lord all his days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth, and Hannah was speaking in her heart, and only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli the priest took her to be drunk. And Eli said to her, How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered, No, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of great anxiety and vexation. Then Eli answered, Go in peace, and the Lord God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. And she said, Let your servant find favor in your eyes. Then the woman went away and ate, and her face was no longer sad. They rose early in the morning and worshiped before the Lord. And when they came back to their house at Ramah, and Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time Hannah conceived and bore a son. And she called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him of the Lord. The man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord establish his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh, and the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli the priest. And she said, Oh, my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who is standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition I made to him. Therefore, I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Skip ahead chapter 2 down to verse 18. It goes into a story of Eli and or Hophni and Phinehas. But I want to touch on chapter 2, verses 18 through 21. Samuel, her child, was ministering before the Lord, a boy clothed with a linen ephod, which was a long robe that the priest would wear. And his mother used to make for him a robe and take it to him each year when she went up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. Then Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you children by this woman for the petition she asked of the Lord." So then they would return to their home. Indeed, the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 more sons and 2 daughters. And the young man Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord. Number 1, being a mother is a privilege. Being a mother is a privilege. If you have your paper with you, number 1, being a mother is a privilege. It's the reality of motherhood can either be very full of distraught issues, or it can be one of joy, or sometimes a mixture of both. I know that for Julie and I, we had trouble conceiving and having a child, and so it took us 5-6 years. And we were really at the point where we were like, hey, I don't know if we'll ever have a child of our own. We may have to adopt. And we were okay with that too. But I remember praying to God. I said, God, if you give me one child, I'm just going to ask for a son. And God answered our prayer. And so now Caleb sits here in the front row, and he has been like a kind of an answer to God's prayer for us. So when I read this story, if any of you have dealt with infertility, or you know someone that's going through that, or if you've ever had a hard time getting pregnant, I mean, it can be a very trying thing. And I really want to be sensitive to you this morning, because for those of us that have traveled down that road, that can be a very trying, emotional, and spiritual thing in a person's life. But I want to focus on one thing this morning. Whether you want to be a mom, whether you never wanted to be a mom, you have a mom somewhere. Whether good or bad, whether you want to be connected to mom or not, she's out there somewhere, or maybe she's passed on. But you have memories of being with mom, or the person that took the role of being a mom in your life. And so we're going to look for a few moments on the privilege that it is to either be a mom, if you've had children of your own, or if you have not had children of your own, to actually be the role of a mom in someone's life. It's amazing to me how God has designed femininity. We've looked at it for the last couple of weeks, that God could have just made Adam, stuck Adam on the ground, and somehow he could have just been the only one he ever made, and Adam could have just somehow, God could have just kept making people out of the ground. Yeah, I made Adam, I'm going to fashion Johnny, fashion Greg, and there could have just been guys to work the garden, and how lame and weird that would have been. Like a whole army of guys just working for God. But God does this amazing thing, is that he creates Eve from Adam out of his own DNA. He fashions the feminine. It's God's wisdom, ladies, that you have been built the way God built you. Many people take femininity to be some sort of weakness, but from God's view, he created you a beautiful, perfect creation, exactly how you are. And it is a privilege, if you have the ability to have children, it is a privilege to be a mother. If you do not have children, or you fill the role of a wife or a mother in someone's life, the reality is people need a role of mother in their life. People go their whole lives looking for that kind of mothering role, somebody to take care of them, somebody that'll love them unconditionally. And I love this story because it shows the desperation of a woman who just wants to have a child that will be in the image of her husband and herself, that will kind of fill the gap in their marriage, she feels like. And so she prays to God, please give me a child. And God doesn't answer her for years. Now, for some of us that have either prayed for things for a long time or wished God would answer our prayer, we know what that feels like. Is God even out there? Am I just praying to vapor? And what sometimes we need to realize is that God's timing is not our timing. God is smarter than you, believe it or not. Some of us, it's hard to believe. It's like, how can God be smarter than me? I know what I need for my life. I know what's going to make me happy. And you know what? God goes, I know what's best for you. Even in our hearts, we go, how can that be? But God answers in His timing, and His timing's always perfect. It's a privilege to either be a mother or to fill the role of a mother in someone's life. Julie, my wife, we did young adult ministry for years. And people would come to us and go, I need to find out. My home was a mess. My mom left us when I was young. And I have no idea what even a solid marriage or even motherhood looks like in a home. You can't believe today, when I look at Facebook, how many pictures of young ladies' homes look like ours. And Julie looks at those pictures and goes, hey, I taught her how to do that. It's a privilege to be a mother or to fill the role of a mother in someone's life. It is possible that Elkanah married Peninnah upon discovering that Hannah could not bear children. So imagine if you're Elkanah, you need kids. You're in an agricultural society, you need a bunch of chickens to run the farm. You got to have kids to run the agricultural side of life. If you have a wife that can't produce children or it's taken years, as Elkanah, I understand, you feel stuck. So unfortunately, he marries another woman thinking, oh, this is going to solve the problem. And what ends up happening, for those of us that have ever tried to date two people at one time, that don't work. Imagine being married to two women. Imagine men don't even have enough emotional energy for one woman, much less trying to splinter it between other women. I grew up in a home, there was a time in my home where there was 5 females plus a female dog. There was a time in my life where me and my dad just huddled in a corner and shook like this together. We huddled together like in a male hug in the corner of the home going, what is going on in our house? Thus the reason we marry our daughters off to another young man. Say, God bless you, young man. God has built one man to be with one woman for life. They are to die together. Or unless one dies, when one dies, that's when the only time you're free to marry. The way you're designed. Now, for many of us, that's not true of us. We've gone through divorce or we got remarried or whatever. But I want you to understand, whatever situation you're in right now, God expects you to die that way. Because here's the thing. God has built the home to be stable. You're supposed to be stable. Many of us are unstable in general. But your home is supposed to be stable. If you're a mom, your home should be you desire your home to be a sanctuary where everybody wants to come there. Everybody wants to feel safe there. Everybody wants to feel cared for there. So for some of us, we didn't grow up in homes like that. So now as we look forward, if you're a mom or grandma or whatever role you play right now, maybe you're a young woman and just got married. Hey, you want your home to be a place where God is honored and others feel like they can come in and sit on your couch and enjoy being there. I tell you, some of the best times I've ever had is when you can walk into someone's house and you're not afraid to sit on the couch, either because it's got plastic on it or whatever, don't sit on the couch. Or because when you sit down, there's 12 pizza boxes stacked on there. You got to shove things away and kick the rodents out of the way or whatever before you sit down. It's like you want your home to be a place that people come and they gravitate towards it. And they just want to be there. And what surprises me here is that Elkanah marries 2 women and now he has set up a disaster in his home. Because your home is designed for one woman to be the head woman that runs everything. She is the head administrator. She is the head of all things that happen in the home. That's her role. That's her job. She runs that business. The problem is when you have 2 CEOs, you got some problems heading down the pipe. And this is exactly what happens. Elkanah probably tries to fix the infertility problem by marrying someone else, and now he sets himself up for some heartache. Look what happens. Elkanah loved Hannah deeply and tried to make up for her lack of children by providing additional things, but Hannah knew that bearing his children was the greatest privilege of all. It was often thought in ancient times that it was a curse from God to be barren. So Peninnah, with all her children in tow, mercilessly reminded Hannah of this insult every year when they took the family trip to worship God at the tabernacle. Every mother knows the immense responsibility and privilege of raising a child, and every good mother desires to make the most of it. Ladies, do you desire to make the most of your opportunities? Okay. We got one lady on board. All right. Hey, ladies, check this out. The way God has built you, you are a special creation of God. No one can fill the role that God has built you for. No one can fill that role. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you can step into a role to help out when another person has not had a motherly role in their life. But understand this, there's no one else that's going to be able to do what you can do in someone else's life. There's no one else that can do it. Guys, you need to treat your wives and the mother of your children as like the most valuable thing in your life, because truly they are your partner in life. They're your partner in life. When I think about my wife, I just go, why would I not want to treat my wife and the mother of my child as well as I possibly could? I mean, why would I not want to treat her with respect and love her and give her everything that I'm capable of giving her? Because she is my partner. I mean, we go hand in hand down the trail of life together. So why am I gonna abuse the privilege that God has given me with a woman that she can't replace? I can't replace what she is to me, what she is to my son, what she is to our home. I can't replace that. So, like Elkanah tries to just do an addition to, but what he should have done was just trusted God. Because what happened is all the babies came later. And the problem is he said, I'm as smart as God, or I'm smarter than God, so I'm going to fix this problem by going outside of God's design and attaching another woman into his home. The way the home was not designed to be. So Hannah starts having kids, but it's a little bit later, and Elkanah has already invited problems into his life. Number 2, being a mother is from God. Do you realize that there are no accidents? Even those of us that had babies a little late in life, you're like, we got pregnant when I was 78. Whoops. You know what? No, there is no whoops. There is no whoops. You are not an accident. Any babies you had late in life, when you're all old and gray, guess what? God decided that baby should come along at that time. You're not an accident. You are a special creation built by God. All your kids are special creations of God. There will never be another child like the child you have. Treat your kids well. I'm not saying make an idol out of your kids. Because Jesus is the priority in everyone's life if you're following Jesus. But what I'm saying is treat your kids like the special creation they are. Hey, you know what? Sometimes your kids act up. Time to lay down the smack. Amen. Praise God. What I'm not saying is baby your kids. Because if your kids are beyond the baby stage, a la 1 or 2, you get done babying them. Okay, you know, when they're 48 living in the basement playing video games, they're like, Mom! I'm going to preach on that right now. Hey, you know what? I'm not talking about babying your kids. What I'm saying is you have such a great value for your children that you do not allow them to be selfish. And we've talked about this the last couple weeks. Moms, you have a special role in your kids' lives. You have a special role. Some of the greatest athletes in the world, they never thank dad. Every time they're shit, here you got these huge, 400-pound linemen that can tear people from limb to limb. And they interview them and go, hey, who'd you like to thank? I just want to thank Mom. All these athletes, just huge studs, beasts of men. You expect them I want to thank my dad for making me a man. Nope. I just want to thank my mom. She was always there for me. I love my mom. So like tears start coming down. You're like, dude, you're a man. Stop crying. There's a special place in everyone's heart for their mother. You may have had a dysfunctional relationship with your mom, but that just shows that inside your heart, you wanted it to be special. There was a part of you that just said, I want that to be special. I want to honor my mother. But being a mother is a gift from God. You cannot replace that. You cannot replace that. So take your role, ladies, seriously. Take your role seriously. No one can choose to be a mother. Only God can give life. Hannah recognized that children were a gift from God, and they couldn't be acquired except through Him. During worship at the tabernacle, she poured out her frustrated and angry feelings to God. God gave her the desire of her heart, and she named him Samuel, which means heard by God. Though not all women can or will or even want to become pregnant, the influence of a woman who takes the motherly role in a person's life is life-changing and far-reaching. You have the ability to be a far-reaching influence in other people's lives. Some people didn't have moms, some people's mothers died, and some of us are desperate to figure out what in the world a mother does. I love it when young ladies have babies and they just come to my wife and go, I have no idea what I'm doing. Do I put them in a bag? What do we do? And it's a beauty that sometimes moms help moms out. And there's nothing quite as beautiful as a mother's heart. The depth of a mother's heart to pray for her kids, the depth of a mother's heart that hurts when their child hurts. If Caleb even remotely gets, if he's working with me out in the street or whatever, and we're cleaning something up, and he gets like a splinter in his finger, ow! Mom's like, what happened? I'm just like, suck it up, son. We're going to work. And she'll come over to me and just like, you should not be letting him do this dangerous work. We're just sweeping the street. This is dangerous. Cars could come by here. We live on a cul-de-sac. There is nothing as sensitive as a mother's heart. And it's the way God built you. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad that women are built. I am so glad that God offset men and women enough to the degree that where one is weak, the other one's strong, and where the other one's strong, the other one is weak, and so they complement one another. It's beautiful. It's the beautiful wisdom of God. We may wish men and women were a little closer to being the same in some respects, but God has built this beautiful design into men and women. Number 3, being a mother is sacrificial. Wow. This is probably the biggest point. The kids will never know what you do, Mom. Kids will never know. Here's the thing. Here's the beauty of this. Watch this. Here's the beauty of this. There are some things that only God knows, moms. Ladies, there are some things that only God will know. I hear from moms who are like, oh gosh, I need to get a job and blah, 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 blah. I need to get out of the home or whatever. And maybe that's true. There's nothing wrong with that. But on the other hand, don't just get a job because you don't feel like you have value. Because our culture values making money and working your way up the corporate ladder and getting a title and blah, blah, blah. Understand this. The thing that God really values is that your home functions well. And that you're not always going to get kudos from that. You're not always going to get your kids running up going, you clean something, Mom. You're so awesome. Give me a big hug. Get over here, Mom. You changed my diaper 400 times when I was younger. You're so awesome. I can't believe how amazing you are, Mom. You know what? There are some things that only God knows. There are some things that God will reward you for when you're dead. And God will say, well done, Mom. Well done. Because God knows the things that are done in secret. God knows the things that all the noses you wiped and the butts you wiped and the butts you had to spank to keep your kids straight. God knows all those things. And God loves you in the role He built you in. Don't run away from that role. Run to that role and say, I'm going to honor God with all that I got. And you know what, husbands? You pour love into your wife. Make sure she knows how appreciated she is. That's something I had to learn, because I grew up in one of those stoic homes where you didn't talk about anything. I mean, like, if you love somebody, you're just like this. So. And what that was supposed to mean was, I love you like I just can't believe. You are my favorite thing in the whole wide world. So what I had to learn to do, I'm still learning, is to speak, open my mouth and speak things of honor and love and support to my wife. Because that's what feeds her soul. That's what feeds her heart. For men, usually not so much. I could go weeks without anybody speaking to me and I'm okay. Yeah. And so, I mean, most guys are pretty low maintenance, right? It's like, send us off to a field somewhere and let us work for a couple weeks. And like, after a while, we're like, what the, holy cow, I've been gone 3 weeks. I can't believe it. You know, for most ladies, they need that emotional support. And guys are many times emotionally retarded. And so they need help. Ladies, you need to help them. When it comes to emotional things, guys are like, I can't function, don't know this world. Where's the tools? So guys, we need to learn how to love your wife. We need to learn, we're not going to all learn how to love your wife. You need to learn how to love your wife. We corporately need to learn how to love our wives. You got to be verbally affirming to your wife or your mom or whoever. I mean, the women in your life, you got to learn to be verbally affirming to them. And Elkanah was not. All right, I love his counsel. This is from like 3,000 years ago, and men have not changed one bit. This is the perfect male counseling. His wife is distraught. I can't have your child. I'm so tore up in my heart. I pray to God, and He doesn't hear my prayer. And as a spiritual head of his home, he should have been very sensitive to the needs of his wife. But what does he say? Why aren't you eating? I'm not eating because my heart is distressed and I'm before God and I feel like I'm praying to nothing and He doesn't hear my prayer and I just want this child so badly and it's been years. Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? What? What kind of counsel is that? Because you want to know why? Guys are built to fix. Guys are fixers. Women don't always want to fix. My wife tells me that all the time. I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to hear what I'm saying because I'm really frustrated. But right at the end of when she's talking, what do I give her? A 3-point plan on how to fix what she just wants. Oh, I can fix that. She goes, no, I don't need you to fix that. I just wanted to tell you what was going on in my heart. Well, I don't really care what's going on in your heart because I know how to fix what just happened. And that's Elkanah. I mean, this is perfect. This is perfect male and female scenario in 1 Samuel. Perfect. Women have something deep inside their hearts. Men are just like, I don't know what you're saying. Am I not worth 10 sons? You know, Elkanah's like, right now, no. You're not worth anything to me. So get out of my face. In Hannah's distress over her lack of children, she swore to the Lord that if she brought forth a son, he would serve God in the tabernacle all his life. Wow. Can you imagine that, ladies? You have one shot at having a child, and you say, if you give me a child, God, I'm going to let him serve you in the tabernacle, which means he would be out of her home his whole life. She's giving away her one child. She's been insulted and beat down by this other wife, the other rival wife. Imagine the one chance she has to say, how about that? God gave me a child, now get off my back. This is her one chance to say, in the face of Peninnah, Look at what God did. He answered my prayer. Now, don't mock me anymore. Don't insult me anymore. You know what? She has so much love for God that her child is not her idol. And I love that. Because the downside to women having soft hearts toward their kids is that their kids can become their idol. They live for their children. And it shouldn't be that way either. You live for Jesus, and everything else takes its proper space. Hannah is so remarkable that if she says, if you give me a child, God, I'm not even going to keep him in my house to say, hey, look at what God did when he answered my prayer. I'm going to let him go, and I'm actually going to almost be barren again in a way, because I'm not going to get to raise my child and see my child grow up. Because it's not about me, it's about you, God. A true woman after God's own heart. It is noble of Hannah and Elkanah that they would give their firstborn son, the inheritor of the family name and wealth, to serve God. As a godly woman of integrity, she honored her vow and brought her only son, who was about 3 years old, to begin to help the priests in the worship of the Lord. With their God-given maternal drive, mothers are renowned for sacrificing for their children to protect and love them. Wow. Any of you guys have moms that were like bears? If you got hurt or something, or if some bully was bullying you around, or maybe you hear about somebody bullying. Because here's the thing. If Caleb ever got bullied, like, or if there was like a rumor like, hey, I think there's bullying going on at school, or like when he was in elementary or whatever, Julie's like this, she's on the phone. Did you know that there's a bully at school? I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't do something, principal, I'm going to come down there and whoop on some elementary butt. You know, and me, I'm in the background going, women get crazy when their kids are in danger. It's that maternal drive. You know, for men, it's like, okay, well, let's hang on here. Let's not go to war. And mom's like, we're going to war right now. Are we going to go die on this hill? Oh, yes, we're going to go die on this hill at the elementary school. We're going to take care of this business. We're going to make sure this happens. Johnny's never going to bother my kid again. Being a mom is about sacrificing. Sometimes people don't always notice it. Sometimes you might feel undervalued. Understand this. If your heart is to serve God, God will put inside you the value for what you're doing. Don't just look at the exterior. Don't just look and say, who's valuing me, who's pouring into me, because sometimes it's only going to be God that's going to pour into you and give you value in what you do at home. Lastly, being a godly mother has godly rewards. Hannah's main desire was to please God and serve him. In this case, with her greatest possession, her son. Samuel was a symbol of God's blessing and answered prayer, as well as the removal of her shame and stigma of being barren. But instead of keeping him, she offered him to God. And as she visited him every year with a new robe, she got to experience the man of God he was becoming. God honored her by making Samuel into one of the greatest prophets in the Bible. Isn't that awesome? She gave up her son, and her son became one of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament. So great, he has 2 books named after him. We're reading out of the book of the guy who was given away by his mother to serve the Lord. She was his only son. In a way, very similar to how God gave away his only son for us, to serve us. Hannah gave away the best she had. And you know what's weird? Is that sometimes we bring our leftovers to God. We bring our garbage to God. Like at the end of the month, oh, there wasn't enough money left because we spent $500 going to Disneyland or whatever. Oh, but it was the same way last month. Or like, do I have to get up today and go to church?
Yes, you do.
I got one. Hey, God is worthy of your best. He is worthy of your best. Hannah gives her best to God. The symbol of everything that she's prayed for, the removal of her barrenness and the stigma and the insults. She could have just held on to Samuel like her little idol and said, I'm not going to let you go because I might never have another kid. You're all I've got. But you know what she says? She goes, God is greater than me. God has given, and I give back to God the best thing that he has given me. And I thought, wow, is that not amazing? Not only just a motherly heart, but a woman who really loves God. That is a selfless, self-sacrificing woman. The kind of woman that ladies should aspire to be like. Because Hannah sets the standard for ladies. She gives her son back to God. And every year, I love this, every year, she makes a little robe. Imagine she's getting ready to go up to the tabernacle. She stitches him a little robe, makes him a little something, make it a little bit bigger or longer than last year. Maybe he's growing a little really quick. She's like, better add a little something on the bottom. I love that in chapter 2 of 1 Samuel, where she says every year she came up and she brings a robe to him. She brings him a new linen ephod, which was what the priest would wear. And she drops him off when he's 3 or 4 years old, and as he starts to grow, every year she brings him a new robe, a new robe, a new robe. Pretty soon he's got like a closet of robes, like a... She still has a mother's heart. She loves her son. But she realizes her son belongs to God, not to him, or not to her. And that's one thing we should always realize about our kids. Our kids are not our own. We didn't create our children. You did not create your kid. You didn't create your kid. God built your kid. You got pregnant because God allowed you to become pregnant. You have life inside of you or gave birth because God himself dictated that time. Be careful. Your kids do not belong to you. Your kids belong to God. God is the builder and giver of life. So, if that's true, then we want to honor God with what he's given us. Because all things return back to God. God honored her, Hannah, by making Samuel into one of the greatest prophets in the Bible. The highest compliment a mother can receive is when she has blessed God with her children, they turn and bless her with their lives. In Proverbs 31:28 says, her children rise and call her blessed. And that's the Hebrew form of saying they got up, they went to their mom and said, you're awesome. I'm so glad that God gave you to me as my mom. Do you need to bless your mom today? There's some of us that need to go call our mom and go, Mom, I haven't talked to you in years. And say, you know what? Of all the problems that we've had, I just want to say that I'm glad that God used you in my life. And I appreciate you and love you. And I don't know if I've ever told you that before. But I love you. And for those of us that have moms that have passed on, in our hearts there are things that we need to forgive and we need to move on from. We need to say, thank you, God, for that time that you gave me with my mother. It wasn't perfect, but I thank you for using her in my life to make me a better woman, to make me a better man. Mothers are special. Imperfect, but special. And we need to honor them for what God is doing in our lives with our moms.